Now we are on Learning Guide 11 here at Francis Kelsey School, and we are doing trigonometric functions, and we're going to be dealing now with radians. So, and it should say Learning Guide 11 here. That's my mistake. It should be Learning Guide 11, and we're dealing with radians now. And radians are when you see things with pies or decimals like 3.14, you know that's radians. All right. Now make sure you set your mode on your calculator. Very important. Set your mode to radians now, so your calculations will be correct. Now what is radians? Well, radians is just a much more accurate way of measuring, and how it came about is that when we have the radius of a circle, so let's look at the radius of this circle right here, and this arc length right here going around the circle is equal to that. So when the radius equals, we call that arc length. That's what we call a radian, 1 radian. So that's 1 radian. All right. Now, a couple of things we have to sort of get through here is we have some degrees that we did in the previous learning guide, and now we have to get them into radians. So some of these you just have to know. So for example, when you see 180, you got to know it as pi. And when you see 360, you know it as 2 pi. 90 is pi over 2. And 270 is 3 pi over 2. 60 is pi over 3. And 30 is pi over 6. It would be nice if it was the other way around, so it's easier to remember. But remember that 30 degrees is less than 60. And pi over 3 and pi over 6, we know that the relationship is pi over 6 is less than pi over 3. And 45 degrees is pi over 4. Now these ones over on this side over here, how I sort of know them and to convert quickly, because you're going to have to know how to go back and forth. I see this as 2 60s, right? Because 60 plus 60 is 120. And I know 60 from over here is pi over 3, so it's 2 pi over 3. And 50, I think of 50 as 530 degrees. And so I know from the previous over here, pi over 6 is 30 degrees, so it's 5 pi over 6. Now going down, we can just do the same thing. We have 730s here. So we know that's 7 pi's over 6. And 300 would be 5 60s. And so we know that's 5 pi over 3. And 135 is 3 45s, because 3 times 45 is that. So we know this is 3 pi over 4. And going down, so we have 5 45s there. So that's 5 pi over 40. And then this is 7. So that is 7 pi's over that. All right, so those are you got to get familiar with. So now let's move on. So now we are going to look at converting. So when you're converting, we have these sort of formulas you get to know to quickly convert. So if I have 40 degrees, all right, and I want to convert that into radians, I know that I have this conversion, pi over 180. Just remember, when you're going to radians, the pi is on top. So now you can go to your calculator and go 40 divided by 180, and it equals some decimal, and then you can convert the decimal, and the decimal converts to 2 pi over 9. because this right here equals 2 over 9. And you just add the pi. All right, so now we are going to do negative 120. Same thing. We are going to multiply it by pi over 180. Put negative 120 divided by 180. And then convert it into a fraction. And we get an answer of negative 2 pi over 3. Now the next ones we are going to convert from radians, so 2 pi over 3, and we want to convert that into degrees. So remember, it's just going to flip now. So it's 180 over pi. Now these pi's can take each other out, because you got a pi on top and a pi on bottom. Now you're going to go 2 times 180 divided by 3. And what comes out is 120 degrees. All right. Now when we have negative 2.5 radians, again we do that same formula, 180 divided by pi. Now we are going to go negative 2.5 times 180 divided by pi in our calculator. And out comes 144 degrees. All right, so I want you guys to try these ones on the bottom here, and you can pause and then check back to see how your answer is. All right, I just noticed I made a mistake up here. This one should be 143.24. My mistake. I was just looking at the different question there. And the two on the bottom, the tries, are these guys. All right, so let's move on. Okay, the next concept here, we are going to look at coterminal. And we looked at coterminal before. And remember what coterminal was. Coterminal is you have a terminal arm. Let's say it's in quadrant 1 here. So we got that terminal arm. And we know that if I go completely around, all right, so if I do 360 and then add that, this green one is on top of the blue one. That is coterminal. Okay, so remember, we're going 360 degrees. But we are now looking at and talking about radians. Okay, so we have 5 pi over 6, and we're going to add not 360 but 2 pi. Okay, so remember, we're dealing with fractions, so let's make a common denominator. So we have changed this to a 6, and then times that by 6, so we get 12. So we get 17 pi over 6. That's the positive, because I'm going 260 positive direction. Now, if I was to switch over to the negative, I would take the same question and subtract 12 pi over 6, and I get negative, what do I get? Negative 7 pi over 6. Okay. Now, let's look at the tries. So I want you to pause, and you guys can try those ones and check with the answers to see how you did. Okay, so those are the answers, so hopefully you did well. In this last concept now, we are going to look at the same type of thing, coterminal, but we have to stay in this domain. So what we're going to do is take the starting angle, so 2 pi over 3, and we're going to add 2 pi. So remember, you're making this a 3, common denominator, so we have to times the top by 3, and we get 6. So the first one we get is 8 pi over 3. And now, if we look at 8 divided by 3, that's something like 2.666. So it's within that domain. Now, if I add another one, see if it goes around again. Let's see what happens. So if I add another 6 pi over 3, another revolution, I get 14 pi over 3. And I realize that 14 divided by 3 is 4.66. So this is not in the domain. All right. So in the answer, you only have 8 pi over 3 in the positive direction. So let's go the negative direction. So I'm going to go 2 pi over 3, and I'm going to subtract 6 pi over 3. And what do I get? Negative 4 pi over 3. And negative 4 divided by 3 is negative 1.33, so that's good. But if I add another one, you'll realize that, again, it's going to go outside that domain because you get negative 10 pi over 3. And negative 10 divided by 3 is 3 point something. So the answers you're going to have are only that and that. That is your